Ever wish you could get business from Facebook groups? Well, today's guest, Colin Dambrauskas, gets over 25% of his business from 2 Facebook groups. And in this episode, he shares why he practically never asks for business and what he does instead and why he believes it works better. He talks about a very clever way that he monitors his groups, and it takes him maybe 10 minutes a day to stay engaged with people. And we also dive into how he's been working with his spouse for the last 2 years. And prior to that, he had gone through 4 or 5 different young assistants who had always moved on to something else. And we talk about what's worked for him in terms of how to work well with your spouse or significant other. So if those things sound interesting to you, Facebook groups, working with your spouse, do's and don'ts, I think you're going to love this episode. Hey, I'm Scott Beckford. This is the I Love Mortgage Brokerage podcast. Every week we create an episode where we share with you insights from other mortgage brokers. And the whole idea is to find stuff that works that you can apply and copy. And I started this podcast over 10 years ago with the goal of just finding the nuggets that other people have that they can share and then you can use in your business. Hey, before we jump into this episode, I want to give a shout out to our title sponsor, OwnWell. So OwnWell is a new app that's available to Canadian brokers. Think of HomeBot. If you're an American listener, there's this fantastic app called HomeBot that allows homeowners to monitor their home equity and buying power and lets them basically manage their home equity, but through you as the intermediary. It's absolutely fantastic. And when I saw this come out in Canada, I knew this was going to be a game changer in terms of an app. You want to check them out at ownwell.ca/Scott. They currently have a waiting list, but you can jump ahead. If you go to that link, ownwell.ca/Scott, check them out and check out this conversation with Colin. Hey, Colin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Scott. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah, we've chatted in the past and done some stuff together, and it's been cool to watch your career grow over the years. And so there's some very unique things that you do that I want to dive into today. But maybe before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into the mortgage biz.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, I had purchased my first home quite young at about 23 years old, and I bought a rental property at about 24, 25. And I think naturally what ended up happening in my world is that a lot of my friends and family who were buying homes a little later, I was always the go-to guy for questions. What'd you do to buy your first house? How'd you get your first mortgage? What was that process like? And after a couple of years of getting free advice, I said, surely there's a way to make a career out of this. And here we are.
How many years ago was that?
Since I got licensed, it's been, I'll be entering my 9th year.
And what were you doing before? Before you jumped to this?
Yeah, well, I worked in the banking industry. So collections, bankruptcies, consumer proposals, any loss leaders basically for the bank. I did that for about 9.5 years. And then I went into sales for 2.5 years. So the credit collections component kind of built into a sales role, which built into real estate, and they kind of all just meshed together.
Okay, tell me something you learned from the collection side because I have not talked to many people who've been in that unique part of the biz bank. What's something you learned from collections that you've applied to your mortgage biz?
How to read an Equifax report. You take a look at anybody that gets into this world for the first time, and you look at an Equifax report, at least not the new ones, the old true Equifax reports. You look at that, it's like a friggin' puzzle, all these codes and numbers. And I stared at that thing every single day for hours a day. So looking at a client's credit profile, I could say, hey, Scott, here's some stuff about your credit that I could pick out right away. So that helped out. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Any in terms of because I got to imagine if you're calling, I've talked to other guys who did debt collecting that are successful mortgage brokers. One other guy I can think of, and he got really good at calling people and building a rapport before they even realized who they were talking to. Because if you call and say, hey, this is Colin, the debt collector, you hear click. Yeah. They don't want to talk to you. So did you have to do any of that in your job as a debt collector?
Yeah. So we were always, they had like an automated system, right? So we would you didn't have time to think between calls. The banking process was how many people can you touch in your 6 to 8 hour shift. So it was just call after call after call after call. So I've never had an issue talking to people over the phone. If you told me, hey, Colin, call these 100 people by the end of the week, I can knock it out, no problem. I've kind of moved away from that in my business personally. I've stopped calling people with the intent to hit one certain
with a specific call to action.
That's just it. Exactly that. Yeah. So I think I did that for so many years. I got annoyed with it. So now I call people just to touch base, and it's really changed my focus on how I've grown relationships and how I've grown my business.
What's your best credit score Equifax tip for first time buyer? So I know this is a very broad general question, but I'm going to see, because if you spent that much time on it, what would be your best tip to somebody who's young and they ask you that question at a part? What would you say?
Great question. I find more and more of the younger generation that we get coming through the office, they seem to think that using credit less, being able to rely on cash and investments is actually the way to go, and not necessarily building a large credit profile. People don't actually recognize that banks want to see that you can build a credit profile. You can have $10,000 available to you and not spend it all. So utilization is something I touch on a lot, right? How much credit do you have available to you? How long it's been there for? And how well have you been able to budget, not maxing yourself out? So we get a lot of clients.
They want you to have enough rope to hang yourself, but then you don't hang yourself and they go, oh, this person we can trust, versus if all you have is a $500 limit on your card, they're like, well, you can't get yourself into trouble with that.
Yeah, I've got so many clients will come in and say, hey, I've had one credit card and I've managed to only use a couple $100 over the last few years. I've killed it. I said, no, that's terrible. Actually, it's the reverse thinking. It's backwards thinking, but that's what the banks want to see, right?
Right. It's very interesting. And anybody listening to this, write that down, use that conversation. Okay. So one of the areas that you've built a successful businesses is through community groups, Facebook groups. So tell me a little bit about what you've done. When did you start that and how that all began? And I've got a couple questions, because about right now you had said about 25% of your business per year comes from a Facebook group where you do no asks for business. So this is not, hey, this is Colin, I'm a mortgage guy. It's just Colin in this Facebook group that turns into a bunch of business. So walk me through how you ended up doing that.
Yeah. So it all started before I actually got into the business. I'm just naturally chatty. I'm naturally social. So I think when I moved into my neighborhood at the time, we had a very small existing Facebook group that just wasn't well managed. And then we noticed there's a lot of questions being asked and a lot of people being involved. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I wouldn't mind also getting involved. And then naturally, just like anything else I seem to do, I tend to find myself in a leadership role of some sort. We're like, hey, do you want to take over the entire page? And so we've put in some, basically just some additional security features to make sure that our community group is in fact just community. We don't allow spams. We don't allow people chatting about business. We don't want to make it a business focus, sell us on, your door-to-door sales as a Facebook group. It's a true community thing.
Yeah.
So because of that, we've done a lot of community things through the Facebook group. It's just turned into, everybody knows my name in the neighborhood. People have kind of been coined the mayor of our neighborhood. Kind of a funny joke that some have given me that coin term, but I've just always been involved in community and social activities by default. Right.
So basically through this Facebook group, you build connections with people. And then some other question is, so how often do you post and what type of posts? There are many different types of Facebook groups people can use for different purposes.
Absolutely.
So this one. So how often do you post, and walk me through that?
Yeah. So the community Facebook groups that I'm a part of. So I have a French community and the neighborhood community and a few others that I'm a part of. Those are just managing relationships and making sure that people have questions about things that are going on in their lives and just chiming in and helping out as much as I can, not asking for anything back. Like a true giver's gain mentality. Mm-hmm. My personal Facebook group is what I'm more focused on every single day. As I mentioned to you before the call, I've got 3 screens set up in my office. I'm in my office every day. I'm working, I'm plugging away. But what I do, I think quite often, is I don't scroll through Facebook or through social posts, just time wasting activities. I'm doing it with the intent to try and connect with somebody sporadically through the day. And I do this probably every single day. Scott just posted that his daughter is going to a Taylor Swift concert. And, I might just, hey, Scott, that's amazing. Is it her first time? And a quick note or a quick message here and there. And it allows me to continuously just touch base with people throughout the day that's not forced. I'm not reaching out saying, hey, Scott, what's new in your world? It's the cliche, right. What's going on, what's new? And then you're forced to try and make a conversation. People are on Facebook because they want to talk, right? They want to post something. They want reactions. And I'm just there to follow up with their posts and follow up with their comments. And naturally, they'll turn into sidebar conversations. Hey, it's been a while. We should catch up and grab some coffee. We should catch up and grab lunch. We should catch up. Oh, I see your business is doing really well. Looks like your wife joined the business recently and things like that. So I've actually opened up significantly more conversations than I think I've ever would, just by dropping the odd comment here and there. And I do that pretty much every single day.
Right. So one of the three screens is basically your social screen, which is you watch, you monitor that, and then you'll engage periodically throughout the day. So it's not like a scheduled thing. Am I understanding this correctly?
I'd love to tell you that I've got it, time blocked out. Go on Facebook and sure, if that works for you, by all means. For me, it's not. I've just knocked out a few emails. I had a couple of calls. I'll just look over. I'll scroll. I'll take a look see if I can find a conversation or two that strikes me as curious. I'll drop a comment or I'll message a person directly and say, "Hey, didn't know that about you. That's really interesting. How are things?" Da, 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 da. And I'll just use it as a way to start a conversation a little bit more naturally.
Right. But so one of those screens, it's for you, it's a in between type activity, not a like you said, not a scheduled activity. It's like, hey, I got some time in between whatever. I'll go and have a look. Oh, this guy, and then engage. And then what would your guess be of how often you do that per day?
Oh, it varies quite a bit. Today was pretty low. I was just a couple of meetings, so I didn't get really around to it as much today, but I might do it after this. If I had to guess, 5 times a day.
Okay, so 5 times a day. It probably takes you a couple of minutes per comment, depending if you're
not even that sometimes.
Yeah.
They're super quick sometimes.
So maybe 10 minutes a day you're spending on this. So, and I think of your face, so you've got this community group. You told me there's 1,200 people in it, which is a good size for. Yep. And is it a community group that's in this particular neighborhood? Like it's
my neighborhood. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So there's about 1,200 people in there. And what kind of stuff are they posting? So what is it that people are going to use that for? That's not to promote their business. That's not salesy. What are they using it for?
Honestly, people are posting about just about anything and everything. Does anybody have any leads on finding so-and-so person to fix this door? Somebody's lost dog is running around the neighborhood. Hey, does anybody know what's going on at so-and-so corner? I heard some ruckus there last night. It's just, it's truly just community keeping in touch, keeping tabs and offering services, offering whatever help that they need, getting rid of stuff, that kind of thing. And I'm there to really facilitate as much as I can. But when there's things typically that we find that are going wrong or people are complaining, I think I've kind of put myself into a role that people reach out to me, right? Just naturally. I haven't asked for anything back, but I've always been there. I started the neighborhood watch program. I got us a hockey rink built in the neighborhood. I've offered different things that we should do, like social barbecues. So I think by just doing these things without asking for anything back, people have started to recognize, well, who's Colin? What is he?
Who is he? Yeah.
Of course.
Right. And then you start to build a relationship with them. I think these social groups are a lot like the old, and if we lived in a town or a village, it would be like the town square. It's where people go to, connect, gossip, whatever. But it's a virtual town square where you are the mayor of the town square, that's an optimum. And you never have to talk about your business because as the mayor, everybody knows who you are. And then they just happen. And if they go on social and I click on your name, I'm sure I'm going to see that you're actually a mortgage, you're a mortgage guy. It's not hidden. So then it's like, oh, he's a mortgage guy. He's not, this is not his business, this whole Facebook group. And then I love that idea. So if somebody wanted to do something like this with the same kind of, what would be your advice to them for someone that was like, hey, I'd love to do this in my community? And what would you do?
Yeah. First and foremost, if you don't have one, get on it. You'd be surprised how many people will sign up very fast. If there's one that's already there, as somebody that runs it with my wife and one other person, we just added another person because we're at 1,200 people. It's a lot to moderate. We could always use more help. So the way I got involved is we only had about a couple hundred people at the time. I said, hey, do you need any help running the page? I went from just kind of moderating and helping out, and now I run it almost exclusively with my wife. And so when you go in, you see who's moderating, who are the admins for this page, and my name and my wife's name come up. So ask to help out. It's just volunteering. It's doing community things without anything that you're not looking to achieve anything immediately, right? It's a long play. And that's the way I've always looked at it.
Yeah, but you're building relationships over the time. I many years ago, I started a Facebook group called Kelowna Kids Events and Stuff to Do when my kids were little.
Yeah.
And it was a great source of building relationships, kind of same idea. And I would just post kid events on there, like stuff that was happening, stuff that I was doing with my kids. And then I deleted my Facebook for a while because I was like, I got to get off Facebook. When I started a new account, I lost the admin privileges and somebody else. So, but anyway, it's fine because my kids are now old at the age where I would not want to be managing a Facebook group for kids, but it actually did turn into like business opportunities, but indirectly. It was never direct. It was always about the kids. Like just making, you had a specific topic. In this case, it was kids and their events. Yours is about your neighborhood. So you're not going to let people post things that are not neighborhood related, right? Like
absolutely.
So you're going to remove that kind of thing. And you just leaned into just being, hey, be helpful. And then all of a sudden more leadership opportunities came, which then turned into, in your case, like a decent chunk of business comes from this every year, just from just being in community.
Yeah, and the French community as well, right? So as I mentioned, I'm first language French, I'm bilingual, and I know there's a lot of listeners and a lot of I Love Mortgage brokering group. There's a ton of people who speak multiple languages. People love their own respective communities. London, Ontario, somehow 8 or 9, 10 years ago, when I had looked, we did not have a specific French community page where you can go and say, hey, does anybody know a family doctor who speaks French? Does anybody know where I can find more services in my language? I have family that's just more comfortable in that language. So I started that page as well. We're up to 700-800 members now, I think. Yeah. And it's the same idea. It's not pushing business. It's supporting the French community, getting to know the French community. It's just another way for me to connect without pushing, hey, I do mortgages. Hey, I do mortgages. Hey, I do mortgages. Because that annoys the heck out of everybody, right? Yeah.
No, that's really good. And okay, so I see in your Facebook profile you worked at Carfax. What did you do there?
Yeah. So that was the sales role I spoke about.
Okay, so it was like, what was tell me about your time at Carfax.
So it was actually CarProof when I was there. CarProof was the Canadian version of Carfax before they got bought out. They actually amalgamated companies as I was before I left. So they approached me because I was first language French. They were a small private company. They weren't, they hadn't really grown at that point in time. They were quite small, and somebody had called me to do an interview. So I was a supervisor for one of my colleagues that was moving over to their company, and the manager had called me for the interview, and we went through it, and then we started chit-chatting. I'm just a social guy, so we started chit-chatting. She's like, "Hey, would you be interested in coming on over?" And at that time, I was a data control analyst. I was at the bank for 9 years. I was paid, relatively well at the time. I said, "No, I'm not interested at all." And so she reached out to me again a couple months later and said, "Are you sure you wouldn't come over? We'll pay you to leave your current job to come and help us grow our team, our group at the time." And so I did. The first touch that I had, or first taste I had for sales, and I recognized that it was something that I enjoyed doing. It was helping people on the service side, but also a sales aspect, and kind of helped grow my sales component to my business.
Okay, that's fantastic. So thank you for sharing your insights on running a Facebook group. I know that there's been some chatter online about people saying like there's sharing that they get business from Facebook groups, but not actually understanding the mechanics of it. And most of them would think, oh, you go on and just post about mortgages all the time. And in most cases, that's not going to work. No. I don't think. Not if you want to play the long game. Talk to me about, you had said something else you had said before we turned on the recorder. So you and your wife worked together for the last 2 years. Prior to that, you had 4 or 5 different assistants. Yeah. And so what's your, and you says that sounds like it's working great for the two of you. So walk me through advice, or if somebody's thinking about working with their spouse, what would be some advice would you give them? Or maybe you just talk about what worked for you, and then people can extrapolate how they could do that themselves. So do it that way. Let's go what's worked for you, because then it's just, hey, this is me. It's like maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. You don't have to try to tell people what to do. So walk me through
a disclaimer for sure.
Yeah, because every spouse, every relationship's different, and what works for one won't. But maybe walk me through how you've been able to structure your working relationship between who does what, and how you guys handle conflict and stuff, so that because it sounds like it's working great. And I know there's going to be other people that are going to want to do that or have thought about it.
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, when we sat down, so when my wife was actually debating joining, when we talked about it, she was on mat leave with our second kid. And my assistant at the time decided that she needed a big change in her life, and she was going to move to Australia. So she gave me 6 months notice. She said, "Hey, Colin, I need to move over." And so I sat down with my wife and said, "You know what? This is this will be my 5th hiring. I keep hiring university 20, 25-year-old student, 25-year-olds at the time. And they always find something new. And I said, I can't keep training somebody new every year. This is killing me. I said, maybe it's time for you to join. But the first thing that I wanted to establish with her was the most important component is, well, communication and taking care of our clients. We may have a rough morning with the kids. We may have an argument later that night, but like it absolutely can never affect the moment that we clock in for work. It is business. We have clients. We have big transactions taken care of. We can't let our argument over a dirty dish in the sink this morning trickle into the business.
You should have just put it away, Colin. You should have put it. Just kidding.
Right? Yeah. So that was the first thing.
Yeah, exactly. Keep going.
Yeah. So that was, I said to her, it's like, if it's going to work, we need to, like, that has to be the rule, like the first and the biggest rule that we follow. It's, we start fresh when the business, like, I mean, we need to turn off the personal side when we can. And I think the way that's worked really, really well for us is she works full time from the house. And I work full time in my office, which is near downtown London. Having my own office, having that, removing ourselves and me being out of the house.
There's also physical space so that there's a separate. It's kind of like, because otherwise it's like, hey, Colin, I don't know if this is the case, but hey, pick up your socks or something, and you're like, crap, I got this file. And so this way, there's also a physical separation that kind of, it goes from, hey, it's family time, it's to, oh, we're now business time, and then you can come back to that. So that probably is helpful, right?
Plus I drive her nuts. Yeah. I'm loud. I like to have some music sometimes off in the background. I'm always on the phone. She's quiet. Leave me alone. Don't make any noise. Get the hell out of my office when I'm working from home. So yeah, the separation is very important. I'm sure there's couples that can work shoulder to shoulder. We could not. We wouldn't have lasted.
How many hours a week do you think she works in the business?
Oh, she's the moment, she starts probably at 7:00 in the morning. She knocks out a couple of emails. She's doing full days as well. She's a hell of a lot faster at tasks than I have ever been, but she's easily 6 to 8 hours a day on average, I would say.
And then what part of the process does she do it versus you? And how did you decide the division of labor? I'm hammering with a lot of questions here, but I know you're smart. You can handle it.
No, I love it. It's like, the nice thing is I already had admin, so I already had them well-defined roles. The only thing that she's taken on is more of the underwriting. So she'll do, fulfillment for the most part, right? It's fulfillment, collecting documents, reviewing documents, updating the applications based off of what she's seeing from documents and things like that. And then following up with clients for signatures and updates. She's now, obviously, because she's two and a half years in now, she's now doing more underwriting, which I need from her to learn, but you can't learn that in 1 or 2 years. It does take a lot of time to build strategies. So she's getting better at that, is picking strategies for clients and doing a little bit more formal underwriting.
Right. So then when a lead comes in, who contacts them first? Is it you, her, and where? I guess I'm going to get really into the weeds just again to help the listeners get an idea of how it works for you, and then they can copy what makes sense.
I'm probably the first 10, 15%. She probably then handles the middle, call it 70 or so percent. And then I take it home from there. So that first introduction, that first phone call, that first email, that first in-person meeting,
the strategy, you come up with all that stuff.
Yeah. My job is to make sure that I've met the client. I understand who the client is, where they came from, what they need, sell them on how we can be of service to them, so that when we do start asking them 1,000,001 questions and 1,000,001 documents, they're not frustrated because they already know this is the process. Here's how we do it. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's why we do it. And here's why it's going to be a benefit to you. And that, so when my wife has handled all that, stuff in the middle, and they're then ready to, submit for an approval or sign a commitment that's ready to go, they're more than happy and ready to go.
Will she phone clients, or is she just primarily connect email?
She will. Yeah, I think we're mostly over email. I think most clients are as well.
Right. But so if say a client's having trouble with, getting you the proper document and she's doing the fulfillment, will she pick up the phone and call them Absolutely. And say, hey, she won't say this. I'm using my own script. Hey, you twit, stop blacking out your bank statements. I can't use that.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
They do something. So, but she will pick up the phone if necessary. But the default is, it sounds like primarily it would be digital, like communication, like emails and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So she will, like, I mean, we do have a fair amount of clients who are, older clients who are just a heck of a lot better to just pick up the phone and call over the back and forth text. Yeah, but it's funny you say that though, because, my wife comes from operations where she's here's how you do it. Here's the way it's going to happen. And here are the steps to take. I come from a very service model, right? Where it's, here's a kind way of doing things. And here's how, so we've actually kind of used some scripting through AI to, I don't want to say, fluffing up her ways of sending direct requests to clients.
AI is great for that. A trick that Denise uses is she'll drop, because she's pretty direct in her communication style. It'll be like, add empathy. And it's like, because otherwise it's just super direct, right? It's like, it's like, oh my God. Yeah. Some people are like, oh, I feel a little, and then, so that's a great use of AI to help make communication better. So she'll obviously do compliance packages and all that, signing packages. Do you do signing appointments, or do you just do send videos? What do you do for that?
Yeah, we send an email with a request to book a call with me, and I'll go over the signing package over the phone, or we allow them to also meet in person. Problem is I'd say that, I was meeting about 80 to 90% of my clients in person and doing all my signatures up front when I started the business. We're now like completely the opposite, I think, which most brokers I've noticed have been doing. I'd always prefer having those face-to-face conversations.
You sound like you're highly relational. You're just like all but the relationship, man. If I would have seen you,
that's what I want to do. But people don't want to come in, right? I got a gorgeous office here in like Wortley Village in London, and there's coffee shops. And I'd rather a client come in. We'll shoot the shit. We'll go through everything in person. Because actually, it's funny. Like I recognized in myself, and I'm looking at my strongest COIs and my referral partners. It was all my clients from the first, I would say, 4 or 5 years who I met in person. They refer me business. They're great. They support us. The clients that we've never met in person, there's just, the relationship is just not the same.
Right. Okay. Just 1 second. I'm writing something down. So, okay, I want to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. So tell me about, what's the tool that you use that makes your business run better? What are a couple of the tools that you find really helpful?
Well, so we use Salesforce. Jungle CRM is, bar none. You have to have the systems, which, you had Jason Armstrong on, our fearless team leader, who's helped us set that up, and it's something that we worked on for many years to get to where it was. And Jason and his team kind of put that together back in the day. That helps tremendously. How people are still working out of Excel spreadsheets. That's kind of where I was when I was only doing, 30, 40 files a year. And it works until it doesn't, until you start, not updating it properly.
It starts to break eventually. Yeah. It's got, for most people, I see guys do it like Jim Tolucas, but he's not human. So, you can't be like Jim. Exactly. Most of you. Okay. So what's one best piece of advice you've received in the business?
It was one of my good friends, a realtor partner back in the day, and it was exactly how I've been running my business, is not to focus on the LinkedIn seconds and thirds. That's, going after the billboard ads and, the third party business. It's focusing on your ones, your immediate family, friends, and clients, turning them all into cheerleaders and spending all your time and effort on those people. They will typically drive more business.
Right. What is one book every mortgage broker should read?
Every single Dustin Woodhouse book, for starters. If you haven't started those, you absolutely have to.
Okay. What's your favorite way to generate referrals that's not Facebook or community events?
Oh, good question. I think for me, it's just like I said, I'm just a natural networker. I do coaching, I do hockey, I'm involved in a lot of different things. I just chat with people. I picked up a client at the grocery store. An older guy behind me was just chatting about prices these days, and I brought up the fact that some of my clients are struggling with their mortgages, and here's how I've been helping them. He's like, "Oh, you're a mortgage guy. My son is buying a house in a few months."
Yes, chatting. I can help. Right? Yeah, because you're so social. Okay, so last question. So remember the movie Back to the Future, the DeLorean? You get in the car, travel back. So if I could send you back 9 years, and you could have 5 minutes with yourself. But you get 60 seconds. I'm not even giving you 5 minutes.
60 seconds.
You got 60 seconds to say, what 3 pieces of advice would you give yourself if you were starting over today?
Don't waste money on Google ads would be the first one. I've spent way too much money on Google ads to get little to no return. Start sooner. I think I was just like everybody else. I was afraid to jump in faster in case, I would fail. I had 6-month-old at home when I decided to make the jump, and it was fearful. So just confide in your abilities and just make the plunge. Get it going.
That's good. Okay. Don't waste money on Google ads. Start sooner. What would be the third thing?
I'd say just enjoy every moment. Every moment's a learning experience, and don't fret on every little mistake you're going to make. I've beat myself up. I've had sleepless nights, I should say.
Wakeless. You're so asleep. You can't even. I'm like, I'm not even getting up. I sleep till noon. You're like a teenager. I'm messing with you.
Yeah. No, I was hard on myself in the first years for small mistakes, trying to be an absolute perfectionist and just
right. Yeah, and the thing is, you can only learn, a lot of this stuff can only be learned through doing. It's sort of like you can't learn to, I always say, especially when it comes to underwriting files, it's like trying to learn how to drive a car by reading manuals. You got to get in the car, man. And it's just like you got to get in front of files, and each one is so unique that Absolutely. It creates a learning experience that you can actually own instead of you're just renting it if you're reading about it. So where can people find you online?
Facebook.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a very unique last name. I think I might be the only Dambrauskas mortgage broker in Canada, if I had to guess. I'm all over. Just if you were to Google me, I've done blogs in the past. I'm all over social media. My name is not hard to find. Okay.
And then one other question I was going to ask you about is do you know if there's any other Colin Dambrauskas that you're aware of?
I don't think so.
Ever done? There's another Scott Peckford. I found him. He's this guy. He's in He's in Nova Scotia somewhere, and he's like a city councillor. And he played junior hockey, so he's obviously way more athletic than me. But I console myself with the fact that I don't know for sure, but I might be better at spreadsheets than him. So I've got he's got hockey and athleticism, and I got spreadsheets. So
yeah.
Okay, man, it was great to connect with you. Awesome. I'm glad things are going well, and it's always good to connect.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's been, your podcast and Facebook group has been a tremendous resource to me over the years. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks, man. Hey, thanks again for listening. And hopefully you got some insights on this whole episode of using Facebook groups. I've got a large Facebook group of mortgage brokers, over 10,000. And if I'm honest, I have chosen not to make it a priority because I have other things. But I realized after talking to Colin, I'm like, wait a second, Facebook group actually has been an integral part in my own business and just meeting mortgage brokers and connecting with people and learning. And I have to make that a time priority again. And so I'm going to end up copying Colin's idea of having that separate screen that I can use. And as long as I don't let myself get distracted with my ADD, I feel like that could be a way for me to be more engaged without it feeling like something that I have to schedule to do, and it's sort of an in-between thing. So I'm going to give that a try, and hopefully you found this conversation inspiring. And if you're in a Facebook group or you have one, apply some of the stuff that Colin talked about. If you haven't, you can start one. I did one many years ago when I was brokering. As I mentioned in the episode, I had a Facebook group called Kelowna Kids Events and Stuff to Do. Now there's over 5,000 people in it. And again, it's a great way if you have a passion, something you're passionate about that is not work. It could be your community, could be your neighborhood, it could be mountain biking, could be rock climbing, but something that's not work related, and build your community, your tribe around that, and you will get business. Just as sure as God made little green apples, that you will get business from it if you stay in that community and stay engaged. So give that a try. And if you have a Facebook group that works for you, shoot me an email. I'd love to do another episode on someone who's doing something slightly different with Facebook groups. So if that's you or you know someone, connect me, send me an email, Scott, I love mortgage brokering. I'd love to hear how anyone else is using Facebook groups effectively. I know that Colin is spitting out quite a bit of business every year from this, and it's working really well for him. Thanks again for listening. As I always say, there's no problem in your mortgage business that someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem is who's got the answer. Hopefully these podcasts provide some of those answers. Thanks for listening. And if you want to find out more about what I'm up to now, you can go to whybricks.com. I've got a whole thing we're doing there. Check it out. I got a blog. We share some stuff that we're doing. Check that out. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.